There's a pattern in history that destroys superpowers. Not war, not invasion, not revolution from the outside. Something far more predictable, far more mechanical, far more inevitable. It's a seven-stage sequence of internal decay that has toppled every dominant empire in modern history, and it operates with mathematical precision. The Spanish Empire, the British Empire, the Soviet Union. Three of the most powerful civilizations ever to exist. Three empires that seemed invincible at their peak. Three empires that collapsed completely. Not because of enemies, because of economics. Here's what you need to understand. Empires don't die from military defeat. They die from economic suicide. They overextend militarily. They debase their currency. They spiral into unpayable debt. They hollow out their productive capacity. They rot from within through social decay. Then, after completing these 5 stages, 2 final dominoes fall. Stage 6, they lose their reserve currency status. Stage 7, the entire system collapses, rapidly, catastrophically, completely. Spain went through all 7 stages, took them about 200 years. Britain went through all 7 stages, took them about 70 years. The Soviet Union went through all 7 stages, took them about 70 years. And here's the part that should terrify you. The United States has already completed the first 5 stages. Not might complete, not heading toward. Completed, past tense, done. We are deep inside the pattern. Stage 1, military overextension, check. Stage 2, currency debasement, check. Stage 3, debt spiral, check. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity, check. Stage 5, social decay and internal division, check. 5 out of 7 stages, complete. We're not at the beginning of imperial decline, we're approaching the end. And the final 2 stages, they don't take centuries, they don't take decades, they happen fast. The Soviet Union, from stage 6 to total collapse, 900 days. The British Empire, from losing reserve currency status to losing their entire global system, 20 years. That's the velocity we're talking about. So here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to walk you through the pattern using history. I'm going to show you exactly how Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union moved through these 7 stages. You'll see the pattern. You'll understand the mechanics. Then, I'm going to hold up a mirror. I'm going to show you how America has followed the exact same sequence, step by step, stage by stage, with terrifying precision. This isn't political. This isn't left or right. This isn't opinion. This is pattern recognition. This is economics. This is history showing you what comes next. Let's start with the first empire that learned this lesson the hard way. The Spanish Empire. Stage 1. Military overextension. 16th century. Spain is the superpower. They control the Philippines, Mexico, Peru, most of Central and South America, chunks of North America, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, colonies in Africa. The sun literally never sets on Spanish territory. King Philip II commands the largest military force on earth. Spanish tercios are the most feared infantry in Europe. The Spanish Armada rules the seas. But here's the problem. All of this costs money, enormous amounts of money. Spain is fighting wars on 4 continents simultaneously. They're fighting the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean. They're fighting Protestant rebels in the Netherlands. They're fighting England. They're fighting France. They're conquering and holding the New World. The military budget consumes everything. And here's what nobody tells you about empires. Military power is expensive. Maintaining global dominance is expensive. Garrisoning troops across multiple continents is expensive. Spain's military reach exceeded their economic grasp. Stage 1, complete. Stage 2, currency debasement. So how do you pay for all these wars when you're running out of money? You debase the currency. Spain starts with pure silver coins, the famous pieces of 8, minted from New World silver, trusted across the globe. But the wars keep costing more. The treasury keeps emptying. So Spanish monarchs start mixing copper into the silver, just a little at first, then more, then more. By the early 1600s, Spanish coins that are supposed to be silver are 50% copper. The currency collapses, inflation explodes, prices skyrocket. International merchants stop accepting Spanish coins at face value. They start weighing them, testing them, discounting them. Spain has destroyed the value of its own money to pay for wars it can't afford. Stage 2, complete. Stage 3, debt spiral. But debasing the currency isn't enough. Spain needs more money, so they borrow massively. They borrow from German banking houses, from Italian financiers, from anyone who will lend. The debt compounds, interest payments soar. Spain declares bankruptcy in 1557, then again in 1560, then 1575, then 1596, then 1607, then 1627, then 1647. 7 bankruptcies in 90 years. Each time they default on creditors, restructure the debt, promise to pay, then default again. The debt spiral becomes inescapable. Stage 3, complete. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. Here's where it gets interesting. Spain is extracting massive amounts of gold and silver from the New World, literal mountains of wealth flowing into Spanish ports, but they're not producing anything themselves. Spanish manufacturing declines, agriculture stagnates, their domestic economy hollows out. Why? Because it's easier to import. Spanish silver buys them everything they need from more productive economies, from the Netherlands, from England, from German states. Spain becomes an import-dependent economy. They extract wealth from colonies and use it to buy finished goods from other nations. They're not making things anymore. They're just moving money around. The productive capacity of the Spanish economy collapses. Stage 4, complete. Stage 5, social decay and internal division. By the mid-1600s, Spain is rotting from within. The best and brightest are leaving, emigrating to other European powers where opportunity actually exists. The population declines. Entire regions depopulate. The Spanish court becomes disconnected from reality, obsessed with maintaining aristocratic privileges while the country collapses around them. Regional tensions explode. Catalonia rebels. Portugal breaks away and regains independence. The social fabric tears apart. Faith in Spanish institutions evaporates. Cynicism replaces confidence. The Spanish people stop believing in the Spanish project. Stage 5, complete. The end, stages 6 and 7. What happened next? Spain lost its position as the reserve currency. Spanish silver stopped being the trusted medium of international exchange. That was stage 6. Then came stage 7, rapid collapse. By 1700, Spain wasn't a superpower anymore. They were a second-rate power, dominated by France, dependent on other nations, their empire crumbling. The fall from the peak of Spanish power to complete irrelevance took about 80 years. That's the pattern. Now let's see it again. The British Empire, the same pattern, faster. Stage 1, military overextension. 19th century, Britain is the superpower. They control India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, large chunks of Africa, strategic territories across the globe, 1/4 of the world's land surface, 400 million people under British rule. The British Navy is unchallengeable. Britannia rules the waves. But maintaining this empire requires constant military expenditure. British troops garrison India, fight in Afghanistan, control trade routes, suppress rebellions, maintain order across a global system. Then come the World Wars. World War I costs Britain the equivalent of 150% of GDP. They borrow massively from the United States, become a debtor nation. World War II makes it worse. By 1945, British war debt to the United States is enormous. They're paying it back until 2006, 61 years of debt payments. But that's just foreign debt. Domestically, Britain creates the welfare state while still trying to maintain a global empire. The National Health Service, nationalized industries, social programs, all while maintaining military commitments across the world. The debt becomes structural, permanent, unsustainable. Stage 3, check. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. Britain in 1850, the workshop of the world, manufacturing powerhouse, industrial revolution leaders. Britain in 1950, declining industrial base, aging factories, uncompetitive industries. Post-war Britain can't compete with American manufacturing or German rebuilding or emerging economies. The industries that made Britain great, steel, textiles, shipbuilding, all decline. Britain deindustrializes. Manufacturing jobs disappear. Factories close, entire regions economically collapse. The productive capacity of the British economy hollows out. Stage 4, check. Stage 5, social decay and internal division. Post-war Britain is a nation in crisis. The class system fractures. The confident imperial mindset evaporates. The sun never sets on the British Empire becomes a joke, a relic, an embarrassment. Youth culture rejects traditional British values. The counterculture of the 1960s, punk rock, anti-establishment movements. Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland all demand greater autonomy or independence. The social consensus breaks down. Strikes paralyze the country. The winter of discontent in 1978-79. Garbage piling up in the streets, bodies unburied, the country ungovernable. British confidence collapses. National unity dissolves. Stage 5, check. The end, stages 6 and 7. The pound sterling loses reserve currency status after World War II. The US dollar takes over. That's stage 6. Then comes the rapid dissolution. India gains independence in 1947, Palestine in 1948, most of Africa in the 1950s and 60s. The empire dissolves in about 20 years. From global superpower to mid-level European nation in 1 generation. The British pattern, same 7 stages, faster timeline. Now let's look at the most recent example. The Soviet Union, the accelerated pattern. Stage 1, military overextension. The Soviet Union, at its peak, controls the largest contiguous land empire in modern history. 15 Soviet republics, Eastern European satellites, client states in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. Soviet troops in Afghanistan, Cuba, Vietnam, Angola, Ethiopia, Syria. The Red Army is the largest standing military on Earth, nuclear arsenal rivaling the United States, naval forces across the world's oceans. But maintaining this costs everything. The Soviet military budget consumes 25 to 40% of GDP. Some estimates go higher. The Afghan war alone drains billions of rubles annually. For what? A war they can't win, in a country they can't hold. Military overextension becomes terminal. Stage 1, check. Stage 2, currency debasement. The Soviet ruble is not a real currency. It's not convertible to dollars or gold. You can't use it outside the Soviet system. So how does the USSR pay for imports, for grain, for technology? They sell oil, they sell gold, they sell natural resources. But internally, they just print rubles endlessly. Soviet citizens face chronic shortages, empty shelves, rationing, black markets. The official ruble exchange rate is fiction. Everyone knows it. The real exchange rate on the black market is 10 to 20 times worse. The Soviet monetary system is pure debasement, currency without value. Stage 2, check. Stage 3, debt spiral. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union can't finance its operations. They borrow from Western banks, from international institutions, from anyone. When oil prices drop in the mid-1980s, Soviet hard currency revenue collapses. They can't pay for imports, can't service debt, can't finance the military. Gorbachev implements perestroika partly because the state is going bankrupt. The debt spiral becomes inescapable. Stage 3, check. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. Soviet central planning destroys productivity. Soviet factories produce goods nobody wants, of quality nobody accepts, with efficiency nobody believes. Soviet citizens prefer foreign goods, black market imports, anything but Soviet-made products. The joke in Moscow, we pretend to work, they pretend to pay us. Soviet agriculture fails repeatedly. A nation with the world's richest farmland has to import grain. Soviet technology falls decades behind the West. Productive capacity, non-existent. Stage 4, check. Stage 5, social decay and internal division. By the late 1980s, nobody believes in communism anymore, not even the communists. Cynicism is universal, corruption is endemic. Everyone games the system. The Soviet elite knows the system is failing. They're moving money out, preparing for collapse. The nationalities question explodes. Baltic states demand independence. Ukraine, Georgia, the Soviet republics want out. Soviet youth reject Soviet values. They want Western music, Western goods, Western freedom. Social cohesion evaporates. The Soviet people stop believing in the Soviet project. Stage 5, check. The end, stages 6 and 7. The ruble was never a reserve currency, but Soviet economic collapse triggers stage 6 anyway, the loss of economic credibility. By 1989, the USSR can't maintain its system. Stage 7, rapid systemic collapse. The Soviet Union survives from the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989 to final dissolution in December 1991. 26 months, from superpower to 15 separate countries, from global influence to regional irrelevance. The fastest imperial collapse in modern history. Same 7 stages, just compressed into 70 years instead of 200. The Mirror, America's journey through the 5 stages. Now comes the uncomfortable part. We hold up the mirror. Let's go through each stage. Let's see how America fits the pattern. And let's be honest about what we find. Stage 1, military overextension.
Just as Spain overextended itself on 4 continents, America today maintains military commitments across the entire world. How many military bases does America have? Over 750, in more than 150 countries. That's not defense, that's empire. American troops are stationed in Germany, Japan, South Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Africa, Eastern Europe, the Pacific, everywhere. How much does this cost? The official U.S. defense budget is over $800 billion annually. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. But that's just the official number. Add in veterans benefits, add in intelligence agencies, add in Department of Energy nuclear weapons programs, add in overseas contingency operations. The real number exceeds $1 trillion per year. $1 trillion every year just to maintain global military dominance. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, over $2 trillion, achieved what exactly? Iraq is an Iranian client state now. Afghanistan is controlled by the Taliban again. $2 trillion to return to the status quo. America maintains 11 carrier strike groups. Each one represents more military power than most nations possess entirely. Why? To maintain a global order that's collapsing anyway. American military reach has exceeded economic grasp. The parallels to Spain are exact. The parallels to Britain are exact. The parallels to the Soviet Union are exact. Global commitments we can't afford, wars we can't win, bases we can't justify. Military overextension. Check. Stage 2. Currency debasement. Just as Spain mixed copper into silver, just as Britain abandoned the gold standard, America has debased the dollar. 1971, Nixon ends dollar convertibility to gold. The Bretton Woods system dies. From that moment, the dollar is backed by nothing except government promises. What happens next? Inflation. The dollar in 1913 had certain purchasing power. The dollar in 2024 has lost 98% of that value. 98%. Everything costs more, not because things are more valuable, because the money is worth less. But here's where it gets really bad. 2008 financial crisis. Federal Reserve starts printing money. Quantitative easing. Zero interest rates. 2020 pandemic, the money printer goes into overdrive. The M2 money supply, the total amount of dollars in circulation, increases by 40% in 2 years. 40%. Trillions of dollars created out of thin air. You know what that is? That's currency debasement. That's Spain mixing copper into silver. That's Britain abandoning gold. That's the Soviet Union printing rubles. Same mechanism, same result. Your savings lose value. Your wages lose purchasing power. Your future is stolen through inflation. And they call it monetary policy. It's debasement. Check. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Just as Spain declared bankruptcy 7 times, just as Britain drowned in war debt, just as the Soviet Union couldn't finance operations, America is deep in the debt spiral. The national debt today exceeds $34 trillion. Say that out loud. $34 trillion. The debt-to-GDP ratio, over 120%. That means America owes more than America produces in an entire year. But it gets worse. Interest payments on the debt are approaching $1 trillion annually. $1 trillion just to service existing debt, not to pay it down, just to pay the interest. That's more than the defense budget, more than Medicare, more than anything except Social Security. And it's accelerating. Every year the debt grows. Every year interest payments grow. Every year the spiral tightens. Can this debt ever be repaid? No. Will it ever be repaid? No. Everyone knows this. The government knows this. Economists know this. The bond markets know this. The only question is, when does the system break? The debt spiral is complete. Check.
Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. Just as Spain relied on imported goods, just as Britain deindustrialized, just as the Soviet Union couldn't produce quality products, America has hollowed out its manufacturing base. The trade deficit runs $800 billion to $1 trillion annually. That means America imports $1 trillion more than it exports every year. America doesn't make things anymore. Where are your electronics made? China. Where are your appliances made? China, Mexico, Vietnam. Where are your clothes made? Bangladesh, China, elsewhere. Where are your pharmaceuticals made? India, China. America is dependent on foreign supply chains for critical goods. The COVID pandemic proved this. America couldn't produce enough masks, couldn't produce enough medical supplies, couldn't produce the things needed during a health crisis. Why? Because we don't manufacture anymore. The Rust Belt is real. Drive through Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. You'll see abandoned factories, closed steel mills, towns that used to build things and now build nothing. American manufacturing employment peaked in 1979. It's been declining ever since. The productive capacity of the American economy has been exported. We financialize instead of produce. We move money instead of making goods. Same pattern as Spain, same pattern as Britain, same pattern as the Soviet Union. Loss of productive capacity. Check. Stage 5. Social decay and internal division. Just as Spain's population lost faith, just as British society fractured, just as Soviet citizens stopped believing, America is rotting from within. Let's talk about deaths of despair. Drug overdoses kill over 100,000 Americans annually. 100,000. Suicides are at historic highs. Alcoholism, opioid addiction, fentanyl. American life expectancy is falling. Let that sink in. In the richest country on earth, people are dying younger. Why? Because hope is dying. Institutional trust is at historic lows. Trust in government, lowest levels ever recorded. Trust in media, collapsed. Trust in corporations, gone. Trust in each other, evaporating. Political polarization has reached levels not seen since the Civil War. Americans don't just disagree anymore, they hate each other. Red states versus blue states, urban versus rural, college-educated versus working class. Every division is exploited. Every wedge is driven deeper. The social fabric is tearing. National identity is fragmenting. What does it mean to be American anymore? Nobody agrees. The confident post-World War II American consensus is dead. Nobody believes in American exceptionalism anymore, or if they do, it's pure denial. The country is divided, cynical, despairing. Same pattern as Spain, same pattern as Britain, same pattern as the Soviet Union. Social decay and internal division. 5 out of 5. 5 stages, complete. America has followed the exact pattern, stage by stage, like clockwork. This isn't opinion, this is observable reality. But here's what you need to understand. The first 5 stages take time, decades, generations. The final 2 stages? They happen fast. Part 4. The final act. The inevitable conclusion. Stage 6. Loss of reserve currency status. Let's talk about what this means. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. That means international trade is conducted in dollars. Central banks hold dollar reserves. Oil is priced in dollars. This gives America an enormous advantage. America can print dollars and the world accepts them. America can run trade deficits indefinitely because everyone needs dollars. America can borrow cheaply because everyone wants dollar-denominated assets. It's called exorbitant privilege. But that privilege depends on trust, on confidence, on the belief that the dollar will hold value. What happens when that confidence breaks? Stage 6. And here's the terrifying part. It's already beginning. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are building parallel financial systems, systems that bypass the dollar. China and Russia settle trade in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia discusses selling oil in currencies other than dollars. Central banks worldwide are buying physical gold at record rates. Why gold? Because they're diversifying away from dollars. The signs are everywhere. International transactions increasingly avoid dollars. Bilateral trade agreements in local currencies. Digital yuan. Alternative payment systems. The world is preparing for a post-dollar system. When reserve currency status is lost, the consequences are immediate and catastrophic. America can no longer print money and have the world accept it. The trade deficit becomes unsustainable. Borrowing costs skyrocket. The debt spiral accelerates into crisis. Stage 6 is the domino that triggers Stage 7, and we're watching it happen in real time. Stage 7. Rapid systemic collapse. Here's what everyone misunderstands about imperial collapse. It doesn't happen slowly. It doesn't take centuries. It happens suddenly. Gradually, then suddenly. The Soviet Union looked stable in 1985. By 1991, it didn't exist. 900 days from beginning of the end to total dissolution. The British Empire looked permanent in 1945. By 1965, it was gone. 20 years from global superpower to mid-level nation. That's the velocity of collapse in the modern era. Why so fast? Because the final stages feed on each other. Loss of reserve currency triggers a currency crisis. Currency crisis triggers a debt crisis. Debt crisis triggers political chaos. Political chaos triggers social breakdown. Social breakdown triggers system failure. It's not linear, it's exponential. What would this look like in America? Start with a dollar crisis. Maybe a major creditor stops buying treasury bonds. Maybe a geopolitical shock. Maybe a debt ceiling disaster that actually happens. The dollar plummets. Inflation explodes. Not 2 or 3%. Think 20, 30, 40%. Import costs skyrocket. Remember, America imports almost everything. Suddenly, everything costs dramatically more. Social unrest follows. When people can't afford food, fuel, medicine, they don't stay calm. Political crisis follows. The government tries to respond. Maybe they print more money. That makes inflation worse. Maybe they cut spending. That triggers economic collapse. Maybe they do nothing. That triggers loss of legitimacy. The debt becomes unpayable. Foreign creditors demand payment. There is no payment. Default? Restructuring? Hyperinflation? Take your pick. All are collapse. The system that has existed since World War II, American military dominance, dollar hegemony, global trade under American rules, ends. Not in a century, not in 50 years, in years, maybe less. That's stage 7. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.